Welcome to the Body Ethos Podcast, where we're shifting the culture from sickness to health. Before we dive in, please remember that this podcast is for educational purposes only and is not a substitute for medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always consult your healthcare provider before making any changes to your health routine. Well, welcome everyone to the Body Ethos Podcast, where we're all about shifting the culture from sickness to health. I'm your host, Jessica Whitmill, and today we're diving into such an important topic, perimenopause. Today's guest is Amanda. She is a certified wellness practitioner, a doctor of pharmacy, and a perimenopause coach that helps women in their 30s, 40s, and yes, I said 30s and 40s, who are struggling with symptoms of perimenopause and who want to improve their mood, energy, and overall well-being. This conversation perfectly aligns with our mission to get to the root cause of illness and empower you on your healing journey. So let's get started and dive into this life-changing discussion. Amanda, again, I'm so excited to have you here with us today.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And I would love for folks to tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into this work.
Sure. So yeah, thanks so much for having me on Body Ethos. I absolutely love what you're doing here. And as you know, I love this topic. So yeah, as you said, I'm a certified wellness practitioner through the National Wellness Institute. I graduated with my Doctor of Pharmacy a long time ago. And then after getting my pharmacy degree, I spent a couple years doing a residency and then a fellowship, and spent almost 20 years in the pharmaceutical industry. And then when I was about 38, actually, when I was 38, I started experiencing hot flashes. So all of a sudden, one day I woke up, I was having hot flashes. And then, of course, those turned into night sweats. And I started experiencing things like weight gain. And so just a little bit about how I got here from the pharmaceutical industry. I went to my doctor with my hot flashes, and like I said, I was 38, and my mom had gone through menopause at 39. And so I sort of had an idea that this might be what was happening, but my doctor said I was too young. And to be fair, 38 at the time was pretty young. So she said I was too young. So she sent me to a lot of specialists to kind of deal with all of the different symptoms I was experiencing, like weight gain, joint pain, lack of sleep. And so after a few years of doing that, she finally did an FSH test, which I'm sure you know, if you're in perimenopause, those hormone tests don't usually tell you a lot. But if you're postmenopausal, it can tell you a lot. So she said, "Oh yeah, you are actually." At the time, I was postmenopausal, and so she said, "Well, the good news is hormone therapy could really help you. The bad news is I don't recommend that you take hormone therapy." So I was kind of left with this sort of hopeless feeling of, what am I to do now? So so it just caused me to seek out these, I guess, less traditional modes of treatment. I guess now we call them holistic or functional medicine type options for me outside of hormone therapy. And it sort of started me down this path of what can I do to take care of my symptoms and optimize my overall health long term. And so what I found changed everything for me. And here I am. I decided to leave the industry, and I really am passionate about helping other women not have to go through the same things that I did. It took me about 7 years to find my peace in perimenopause, and I'm hoping that other women can maybe take a few months, not years. So
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I love your heart in all of this. And it's also too like through this podcast, like being educated about it before it even starts. So
yeah.
you know what's to come.
Yep,
um
exactly.
yeah, absolutely. So I love that you're helping women and empowering them through this journey, because it does feel very lonely, like you said, and you're just kind of referred out and there's not a lot of hope in the traditional medical system, unfortunately.
Yes.
So with that, I was going to say many women do feel blindsided by perimenopause. Could you maybe walk us through maybe what's really happening in the body during phase, and how women younger and younger are actually experiencing symptoms of perimenopause and menopause.
Absolutely. So this is kind of one of my favorite topics. So the definition I get asked a lot, menopause is diagnosed after 12 months of no period at all. So basically, any time leading up till then, when your ovaries start to retire, as I call it, is perimenopause or around menopause. And that can happen. We first assumed up to 10 years before actual menopause, but we're learning, as I'll talk about in a second, it can be up to 20 years. So this is a transition where we're moving from a time of, a reproductive phase to a time where we're no longer able to have children. Our ovaries are declining, which causes so the ovaries are the primary producer of estrogen. And, when they start to, they start to produce fewer eggs, they start to not work anymore, then our estrogen starts to decline. But in the short term, before actual menopause, before it really declines, there's this fluctuation. So there's this imbalance, as we've talked about, between estrogen and progesterone and other hormones as well. So that's kind of the primary thing that's happening. The decrease in estrogen and that fluctuation can result in many of our symptoms. But the other thing that I learned along this journey is there are really three root causes of our symptoms. One is the hormone imbalance. Number two is also nervous system dysregulation. So estrogen can be found in almost every organ or system of the body. And it has a protective effect in our brain and our nervous system as well. So when estrogen starts to decline, we can start to have this overactive stress response or overactive fight or flight or sympathetic response. Cortisol can also increase. I know you know that. And the third sort of root cause is, this is the one that surprises most clients, is inflammation. So estrogen is a powerful anti-inflammatory. And so when it starts to decline, it actually can set off a low, a wave of low grade inflammation all throughout our body. So, it can impact all our organs, stomach, ears, eyes, nose. You can start to, I was just talking about this the other day with a client. She started to have, allergies to seasons or now her cats that she's never had before. And a lot of that can stem from this inflammation response. It can also inflame areas of your brain, which can result in cognitive symptoms like mood, instability, brain fog, those types of symptoms. So, hormone imbalance, nervous system dysregulation, and inflammation are what we're finding can be some of the root causes for our symptoms. And
Go
you
ahead,
mentioned,
yeah.
sorry, you mentioned the idea that it's happening earlier and earlier. So a study was just released almost a week ago, February 25th, by the University of Virginia. And they looked at 4,000 women. And what they found was that 50% of women, I have to get this, the study found that more than half of women who were aged 30 to 35 are already experiencing moderate to severe perimenopause symptoms, but they don't seek treatment because they think they're too young for that to be happening. So it's pretty incredible how it's not necessarily that anything in the environment, although that's probably part of it, is causing us to experience these symptoms earlier on. I think it's a large part, that women have been probably experiencing some of these symptoms. And the ones that emerge earlier are like the emotional ones. So anxiety, depression, mood swings, irritability. I think if we reflect, a lot of us, on our early mid 30s, we may have been feeling some of those things and we just didn't automatically, attribute them to our ovaries, starting to not work anymore or start on their journey of retirement. So I think it's fascinating. I think it really speaks to some of the things that we can be doing, like the things that you're promoting, moving earlier on towards sort of prevention, or at
Mhm.
least being educated as early as possible around some of these things.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's so important because, like you said, a lot of people, they think, oh, I have a mood disorder, so I'm going to go get a pharmaceutical, or, oh, I have, some sort of, imbalance, and they are just trying to correct symptoms, but really there's always an underlying root cause. And like I see a lot in my practice is that it's nervous system dysregulation or some sort of root cause to that inflammation, along with hormones being kind of the
Yep.
the
Yeah.
underlying factor, right?
Yep.
So, I think you're right. I think there's a lot of contributing factors to this early menopause, but I think the thing is just realizing what it is, that this is what they're going through, and there's a lot that we can do to support the body to have a smoother transition or even preserve hormone levels in your 30s. But you have to know what's going on first, right?
Yep.
And you have to
Yep.
be informed. And that's why I think, we were talking about lab testing. I love doing like a Dutch test or even serum hormones through labs, pulling a lot of those these days for women who are in their
Yep.
30s and seeing a lot of really low progesterone, even low estrogen, or that higher estrogen in relation to progesterone, and even seeing low other numbers as well, like you were saying earlier, like, was it what were we talking about earlier? I forgot the
Cortisol,
cortisol.
the
Yeah.
stress, yeah, stress
Yeah.
hormone. Yep.
Cortisol is just all over the place too when you
Yes.
look at that as well. So, yeah, so many different numbers that we're looking at. And it's kind of crazy. And it's so affirming once you know what's really going on in your body, right? That
Yep.
there's like an answer. And you're not going crazy. You're not, there's a reason that you're having the brain fog and the mood swings and even the night sweats and the poor sleep and the less tolerance for stress.
Yes.
So yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. Yeah. And estrogen's our friend, right? I think that's a beautiful thing about it. I think estrogen gets a lot of bad rap because we hear a lot about estrogen dominance, which absolutely happens to a lot of women, but estrogen can be really supportive as well, right?
Absolutely.
It gives us our our curves as women, and it gives us that tolerance to stress, like you said, and it helps us with inflammation. So we need those beautiful healthy levels to maintain vibrancy, so
Yep.
yeah,
Yep.
absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love that. Well, thank you. And I wanted to touch on the nervous system piece and to go a little bit deeper into that. It plays a key role in how we experience perimenopause. Can you explain the connection between stress, nervous system dysregulation, and hormonal shifts? And maybe a little bit about how you coach some women on how to support their nervous system during this transition.
Yes, absolutely. So, this is another favorite of mine. I call what happens to us during this time, um, like the symptom cycle, and
Mm.
it's because it's the idea that all of the things we just talked about, the hormone imbalance, the nervous system dysregulation, the inflammation, some of the other external factors that we're dealing with around this time of life, they all interrelate and they all impact each other. So we talk about how hormone shifting and reducing estrogen can play a part in inflammation and nervous system dysregulation. At the same time, inflammation itself can disrupt nervous system functioning, and it also impacts the way our body regulates our hormones. Um, so it's sort of this cycle, and whereby each root cause sort of impacts the other. And if you think about it, it makes sense because our symptoms, I think there have been quoted, depending on the source, up to 100 symptoms of perimenopause, and so it makes sense. It's sort of a really complicated mix of symptoms that all impact each other. Because then, if you those are the root causes, and then if you think about the symptoms, you know, hot flashes, night sweats, external stressors can impact our sleep. Well, lack of sleep also then furthers inflammation. It furthers weight gain. It furthers anxiety or nervous system dysregulation. And so it's just this cycle. And I think one of the components or one of the important pieces is disrupting this cycle somewhere. And people, I'll say focus on your sleep. It's probably the biggest thing you can do to help yourself focus on your sleep. And someone will say, well, how do I do that when I'm having hot flashes and
Yeah.
night sweats and I'm waking up in the middle of the night, and I can't get back to sleep because I'm having these swirling thoughts? And it's a fair point, so then you sort of have to look at it. What I recommend is going to the nervous system and really tending to the nervous system and the stress response. So anything we can do to activate the opposing force of the sympathetic or fight or flight response, um, which is actually the opposing force is the parasympathetic response. It's kind of the rest and digest. So anything we can do to activate that, it decreases the activation of our sympathetic. You can't have two going at the same time. And things that you can do to activate that, it calms the nervous system. Things that you can do are things like breath work, yoga, mindfulness, meditation, things that just can take you out of that fight or flight mode and put you into the rest and digest mode. And then once you can do that, for me, I practiced box breathing at the onset of a hot flash and then multiple times throughout the day. And it just sort of helped reset. And once I could do that, and I kind of trained my brain um, to calm itself through the breathing. Then when I woke up in the middle of the night with a hot flash, or I woke up with, swirling thoughts, I would use the breathing and it would help me get back to sleep. So eventually over time, tending to my nervous system, you know, overactivation helped me with my sleep. And it helped me with my hot flashes as well, which then, as we talked about, because it's this cycle, helps with other things like weight gain, the feelings of anxiety. So I think, and there are lots of things you can do, as you know, I know kind of as a specialist in this area, um, to activate your parasympathetic response. One of the other things that I really love to focus on is this mind, body, spirit connection. So I can't sort of overstate the importance of knowing that what happens in your mind really affects your body. What happens in your body really affects your mind. And having, data show that having some sort of spiritual or gratitude practice impacts both. And so optimizing that connection and really tending to it can help not only with the nervous system, but with the inflammation and with some of those emotional and physical symptoms.
Absolutely. So what you're saying, Amanda, is that when we are coaching clients to do the box breath, it really does work, right?
Yes, it does work.
Yes,
Yes,
it's like those simple things that we take for
yes.
discount, right?
Mhm.
Because I think we're searching for, oh, I want this test, or I want this, or I have to go do brain spotting, or neurofeedback, or something, really crazy. But reality, what really helps is just those simple, small practices day after day that
Yes.
we can blend in, that are free, and really do support our overall, like you said, mind body connection. So I think that's a really good reminder, because I think it's easy to get caught up in all like the trendy things that you can do to
Yes.
support your
Yep.
body. But in reality, it's just, what is that? Like a 16-second breath work
Yes.
exercise. Yeah.
Yep.
um,
And, and I think what you say is so important because it is kind of it is a practice and it
mhm.
takes time. And, I think, and it takes consistency. I think we've been
Yeah,
hearing this our whole lives,
exactly.
time, consistency, nutrition, exercise, all of these things, but it takes time and it is a combination. Many times it's just a combination of some of those simple changes that you're talking about that, um, the first combination might not work for you. Give it time, try it
Yes.
again, and you'll find something that works and it'll work. And then it may stop working after a little while, but
Yeah.
at least you're empowered with that knowledge and the information. So I think it's really important.
Exactly. I think, I know as a coach and, a practitioner like myself, it's like, I just want to give my clients tools that they can
Yep.
use. So when they need it, because they're not always going to have you, right? And that's what I tell them. Like, you're not always going to have me, especially in the middle of the night when you're having a sleepless night or a hot flash or something like that. But you can go back to these tools, and that's why they're important and why and so, yeah, I love things like box breathing or like the 4-7-8 breath, where
Yep.
breathe in 4, hold for 7, breathe out for 8. And then, of course, the box breathing is breathing in for 4, holding for 4, breathing in for 4, holding for 4. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah.
Yep. Breathing in for 4, holding for 4, breathing out for 4, holding for 4. Yep. And you can just do
Yep.
that. You do it multiple times throughout the day when you're not having a hot flash, and you eventually train your brain that, okay, because a lot of people panic when they feel a hot flash coming on.
Absolutely.
I panicked because I thought, especially if I'm out in public, or, I was in an interview for a new job one time with my boss's boss. And,
Oh,
I
yeah.
thought, wow, and I panicked, and I didn't have the tools at the time, but I just kept thinking, um, in retrospect, man, I wish I'd known that just, taking a deep breath, calming down. Sometimes it's hard to do when you're in front of other people, but when you even just think about, okay, just calm down, breathe,
Hmm.
evenly, you really find your nervous system slows down, and it has shown to decrease the frequency and intensity of hot flashes.
Yeah, no, I think it's beautiful, like, just knowing how your body works, right?
Yep.
That when you're more symptomatic, you're more probably likely to be in a sympathetic dominant state, that fight or flight. So if we
Yep.
can switch the nervous system to the parasympathetic by just some simple just being mindful of your breathing, like you said. And I tell clients too, like, if you're out and about, just sneak into the bathroom and take a few
Yes.
deep breaths,
Yep.
if you feel like you can get away, and just kind of take a moment for yourself, and you'll emerge a new woman because
Yes.
you've been able to switch your nervous system state, right?
Yes.
So, yeah,
It's so
I love that.
empowering.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it's true, like, we don't wanna, also, say, like, having a hot flash is not something that puts you in a panic, because it's very uncomfortable. Um, I mean,
Yes.
I've dealt with similar symptoms in my hormone healing journey, where I've woken up just, like, overwhelmingly hot in the middle of the night, a
Yep.
kind of hot flash-esque, and so, you're just like, "Oh my gosh, like, where am I? What's happening?" You're kinda in a panic, like, "Why am I feeling this way?" But if you can just kind of take those deep breaths, it really does make a difference. So it's a good reminder how important the nervous system is, and how these consistent daily practices really do add up. So if you're in your 30s, start practicing it now. So
Yes.
when you get to perimenopause, you already have these
You're
really
ready.
your strong foundations in place, and your nervous system is more regulated to begin with, right? Because that's a huge piece of all of this.
Yep.
How things get really wacky is if we're just always stuck in that fight or flight and always have the cortisol and the adrenaline pinging. So yeah, I love that.
And just to add to that really quickly, is
Yeah,
it just occurred to
absolutely.
me so I'll have clients come to me for hot flashes, and they'll say, these are really disruptive. But if you double click on that, um, many women will come with anxiety. And you said something that made me remember the waking up in the middle of the night. Sometimes they'll wake up no hot flash, but they just feel this panic. Their
Mhm.
hearts are racing. They feel like they can't catch their breath, and they have no idea what's going on. They're not having a hot flash, but they're waking up with this, and they do talk about it as feeling a feeling of anxiety. And so that's another thing, whether it's hot flash or not hot, or not, or just waking up and feeling this panic. That's another nervous system related
Mhm.
response. And it's another, breathing, being mindful, getting your nervous system, under some sort of control really can go a long way to helping with that as well. And I think that's a pretty significant symptom that women are experiencing and just don't talk about a lot.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think most people have nighttime wake ups,
Hmm.
whether or not they are feeling panicked or not. We're not sleeping through the night. And that's definitely a nervous system dysregulation symptom. And then your mind starts racing. Even if you don't
Yes.
wake up panicked, you're just like, well, I'm awake now. And then the
Yes.
amygdala clicks in. It's like, oh, well, then
Yes.
we must think about all the things
Yes.
that happened wrong yesterday. And
Yes. What
so
did I say that was like embarrassing? How many ways was I a bad mom? I just let me count
exactly.
them for the next 3 hours.
Exactly. And be really nervous about my next day because I was supposed to
Yes.
get good sleep because I have a big meeting tomorrow. And yep. Yeah, so fun. So if we can get that nervous system regulated, our body will feel safe to sleep through the night and we will, have that peaceful sleep, like you said, which reduces inflammation, reduces stress, keeps us really healthy. So I think that this is such a great reminder. So I appreciate you bringing it to the podcast. I wanted to also talk about just kind of empowering women on this journey. Many women feel like they're supposed to push through this phase. And I think it's something that, even my mom, it's like, now that I know all this, I'm like, we haven't tested your hormones. Like, how did you go through this without any support? Like, my heart goes out to everyone that's been through this phase and not had any support at all, or even felt like they could talk to even their friends about it. Right. And I love that we're so much more open. I think like this new generation that's coming through and we're not kind of taking no for an answer. But what's your message to women who are feeling frustrated, unheard, or unsure of where to start their healing journey? And I'd love for you to also talk about too why community is so important and for women to support each other through this journey as well.
Yeah, I love as you like, we're no longer quiet. I like to say menopause is having a moment, like a long overdue moment. And hopefully it's longer than just a moment. But it's, my mom never talked about it. In fact, she said, oh, I wish we had this, these types of support back when I was
Yeah.
going through this, because you're right. Women were just sort of like, just, hey, deal with it. Like, along with all the other things that you might be dealing with this, with in this phase of life, let's not talk about it. So it was kind of
Mm-hmm.
this, taboo subject, which, not only was a disservice to the women going through it at the time, but, it was a disservice to all the women that came after them. So,
Right.
so I think women should know perimenopause is not something that you just have to push through alone. Your experiences, your symptoms are totally valid. Listen to your body. You know, you what's happening is real. I say, like, I don't love the term, but I say you're not going crazy. Well, you are going crazy, but it's for a good reason. Like, your mind and your body, everything's out of whack, and so, but it's not something you have to do alone. And your symptoms are, no matter how strange they are, could probably in some way be traced back to hormone imbalance or perimenopause. So it's a significant transition in a woman's life, and I don't think it should be handled lightly. From a physical perspective, it's significant, but also from an emotional perspective, you're going
Mm-hmm.
from being able to bear children to not. Um, and so I generally recommend four things for women who are starting to experience some of these symptoms, or who maybe aren't yet but would like to get ahead of the journey.
Mm-hmm.
First, I say, find a knowledgeable practitioner or coach. There are people out there who are very knowledgeable about this now, and get the support that you need. You do have to advocate for yourself many times right now, because um, there's just not yet the support, I think, globally, more broadly,
Yeah.
that women really desperately need right now. So it is more of a self advocacy journey. So find someone who knows what they're talking about and who can tell you what's going on in your body during this time. And also, as you said, you referred to tools. I talk about a toolbox, who can help you fill your toolbox with solutions and strategies, so that you know what to pull from when you're feeling certain symptoms. And then if one doesn't work, maybe at some point, then you have that toolbox. You can pull a different tool to manage, the symptoms. I
Mm-hmm.
say, you and I talked about this, start with small steps. So don't expect, that one thing is going to change everything overnight. And don't, it's not usually helpful to try and implement a whole lot of things at one time.
Yeah.
So, so maybe try with, start with breathing, start with changing a little bit of your nutrition to be more, perimenopause specific, and contain those nutrients that are important for hormone balance and inflammation and nervous system, or perimenopause specific movement. Just start small. I think we've learned over time habits are built over time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the other thing that I recommend is to work on mindset. So this is something I really underappreciated when I was going through what I was 8 years ago. Um, trying to flip our mindset from, oh, this is, these are awful symptoms, and they really impact our quality of life. But instead of thinking, gosh, I just need to survive this, I just need to hang on until I can start feeling better in however many years, we can flip it to think of it as an opportunity for self discovery, an
Mm-hmm.
opportunity for growth. If we learn how to sort of harness all this energy that comes around during this time, like literal energy from our body and the heat, but also this kind of um, ability for us to empower ourselves, just harness that and use it for, kind of this. I don't want to say self improvement, but it really can be this time for self discovery. I look at it as like we're in a little cocoon, and we can emerge as a butterfly, and it can be such a beautiful experience.
Yeah.
Although it can be uncomfortable, it really can be a beautiful
Mm-hmm.
experience. Um, and then the last thing you mentioned, I don't think can be overstated, is the importance of surrounding yourself with a community, a supportive community. And it doesn't have to be anything formal. We have hot flash happy hours here in Colorado, and it's just it's intended to get women who are, experiencing something similar to get together, connect, educate themselves, because knowledge is power, and share their symptoms, share what's working with them, or share what's working for them, what they've tried. You'll hear some very interesting things. But I think that community is so important. And there has been research to say that women in this phase of their lives who connect with each other and who make that concerted effort to share what they're going through, their symptoms actually improve. So, yeah, community cannot be understated. Plus, it's fun to sit around and, and complain every once in a while and commiserate and talk about, you know, not sleeping.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I love it. And I love that you host these hot flash happy hours. So if anybody's in the Boulder, Colorado area or just kind of in the Front Range and you want to pop by, definitely check out Amanda's website and her happy hours. I know I'm excited to attend one myself. And I think you do some online, correct?
We
Have
do.
you?
For women who are not in the area, we host virtual hot flash happy hours. So I host them each, the one in person and a virtual one every month, and we'll just talk about different topics. But really, yeah, it's intended to just be a fun kind of sacred space for women to
Yeah.
to connect.
I love it. I think that's so important and I was thinking about when you were saying this too, like how this time is for a lot of women I wouldn't say a wake up call, but a pause to say where have you not been nourishing yourself, right? Like you've been pouring yourself into your family or your job or, all sorts of other people probably as women do.
Yes.
And now we have to kind of focus back on ourselves because we have to. Our body is saying we need that nervous system regulation. We need to decrease inflammation and nourish our bodies with our food and nourish our bodies with community and all those things that we had kind of been lacking. So I feel like if you develop those things before you go through this transition, even better. But if you're starting to be in this transition or in the middle of it, it's that reminder to say, like, where have you not been as nourishing to yourself? Because I'm sure you've experienced that too. Like, oh, I was just focused on family and career. And
Oh yeah.
now it's like, oh, I really do need women in my community. I really do need to be mindful of my day to day, all of that. And I know it's something that I too, could even be better at in my early 30s over here. So yeah.
And I find myself reminding women, and I'm sure you do too, that you cannot be your best for the people around you and the people you love until you're taking care of yourself. So I think, for me, I speak for myself, I felt super guilty, just taking time, reading, doing some of the things that fill me up and give me energy. because I thought, well, there's 50 million other things I need to be doing. I need to be taking care of my kids. I'm a terrible cook, but I should be trying to cook, all the things. And then ultimately, you burn yourself out and you're not doing
Mhm.
yourself any favors, and you're sure not doing your family and the ones you love and your job. You cannot function at your very best until you've taken care of yourself. So I think it's a hard, I'll speak for myself. It was a hard concept for me to get my mind around, that like, oh shoot, I do have to kind of put myself first in many ways just to make sure that I can like be there in a meaningful way for those around me.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And also too, how putting yourself first also helps your symptoms, right? We
Yes.
feel more
Yes.
filled up in
Absolutely.
community, and yeah, our nervous system's regulated, our stress is down, symptoms are going to be better. And we have
Yes.
to have that to show up as our fullest too, right?
Yes.
Because yeah, having
Yes.
a hot flash, I can't imagine like during an interview, my heart goes out to you that you
Oh,
experienced that.
it's just one of the many like super embarrassing. Luckily, I got really used to handling. I was like, oh gosh, I'm about to have a hot flash. I'm not mad at you. I'm not embarrassed. But I think many women can find themselves in those like really and I think some women actually, not to go on off a tangent here, but they
No, yeah,
do sort of prevent themselves from getting into those situations in the first place. So some may turn down
absolutely.
social situations. They may
Mhm.
not, they may not volunteer for their kids. They find themselves making choices in their lives that are driven by their symptoms because they don't know what to do with them, and they
Mhm.
don't know how to manage it. So
Yeah.
yeah. An interview is not an ideal scenario, but you know, it's life.
Yeah,
You have to laugh
absolutely.
about it.
Yeah, exactly, and thankfully, like, yeah, everything worked out okay, and but that's why I think too it's important to have those tools like we were talking about, so
Yes.
and just to prepare for when that moment arises, and I think you bring up a good point too of how women probably isolate themselves when in reality they need people and they need to be filling their cup up, instead of retreating, during this time because they're worried about
Yep.
having symptoms, or maybe they are fatigued and brain fogged and achy and, all
Yes.
those things, and they really do need to be seeking out community and, coaches and practitioners to support them. And I was gonna go. I just wanted to say one thing about you saying about finding a practitioner that's informed. I would say
Mhm.
like if your local area doesn't have one, there are so many people on Zoom now that do telehealth. So if you're listening
Yep.
to this, there's people all over the country that are experts in this area, and so I would seek them out because you may not always find someone in your local area. And so
Yep.
I know where I'm from, I don't I would think you probably would need to drive an hour,
Yes.
in my hometown, probably to find someone who's really perimenopause and root cause informed and nervous system informed. So, and that's okay. You get this help you need and seek it out wherever you can find it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And community too, even if it's online, talking to ladies at the hot flush happy hours online. I think that that's the beauty of this connected world we're in. So don't feel like you're isolated, that there's
Yep.
even digital friendships or practitioners that can help you. So,
Absolutely.
yeah, I love that. I would love to wrap up this conversation. It's been so fun, though, Amanda. So, I wanted to end with first of all, is there anything else you wanted to add to this discussion before I go into the final question?
Um, no, I just think, I think being knowledgeable is empowering, and yeah, no, and I knowing what's happening, knowing what's going on is probably one of the more beneficial components of managing our symptoms, because once you know what's happening, you kind of know then how the tools work as you're filling up your toolbox, and you're able to more appropriately sort of pull out the tools for the symptoms. So yeah, knowledge is power.
Oh, I agree. I couldn't agree more. And I think that that's why, my heart behind this podcast. And, I love that, again, we're in a digital age where you can listen to an audiobook on this
Yep.
topic or pull up a podcast or a YouTube video and just really inform yourself about what's happening in your body. And so I think it's beautiful that we're, in this age where we're empowering ourselves and we have so many tools. So take advantage of them. So awesome. As you know, the Body Ethos podcast is all about helping people shift their lives and ultimately shift the culture from sickness to health. What is one way for whoever is listening to this podcast that they can do that today?
Yeah, I think just listen to your body. And, if we start again by knowing kind of what's happening or what's going to happen eventually, this is an inevitable transition.
Yeah.
Everyone goes through it. Now, not everyone experiences symptoms the same way, but it is something that happens to everyone. So knowing what's going to happen and then listening to your body, um, really sort of taking your health into your own hands and seeking that support when you need it, or even before you think you're going to need it.
Yeah.
And I think we can start shifting it's so important to start shifting the conversation from, shoot, I'm really experiencing these symptoms, I need someone to help me now, to, I anticipate this is going to happen to me. I can start, as you said earlier, I can start preparing my body. There's so many decisions and choices we can make before our ovaries go into retirement that
Mm-hmm.
can help prepare us for, optimizing our hormone balance, you know, limiting the amount of distress or stress that takes place, or the inflammation or the nervous system dysregulation, just kind of preparing our body, it's like tilling the soil, I guess, to help reduce our frequency and intensity of symptoms, but also to really make sure that we're being healthy for the long term and we're really
Absolutely.
focusing on our well-being and making sure we're healthy for years to come.
Yeah, that was perfectly said. Thank you so much for that final thought. I think that's perfect. Like just shifting that conversation and making those small choices today make a
Yep.
huge difference.
Yeah.
Whether you're going through it now or we're going to be going through it at some point as women, it's a rite of passage that all of us are going to have to go through. So
Yeah.
it's every day making those small choices to shift your health is so beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Amanda, for joining us on this episode of the Body Ethos podcast. I hope everyone was empowered by this conversation to take meaningful steps, like Amanda said, towards healing and vibrant health as we move into these new seasons of womanhood. If this episode resonated with you, I would love for you not to keep it to yourself. Subscribe, write a review, share it with someone who is ready to shift their healing journey, or maybe in this journey of perimenopause themselves. For more resources, updates, or ways to connect with me or Amanda, please check out the show notes below. And remember, true healing is when we get to the root of the issue and reconnect with the wisdom of our mind, body, and spirit. So until next time, I hope you guys stay curious, stay empowered by this knowledge, and keep shifting the culture from sickness to health with these small steps every day. I hope everyone has a great day. Thank you.